The sixth installment of this saga begins in 1968, where we meet a young woman named Iris and her boyfriend Paul, who are traveling in a car towards a surprise destination. As they drive along a road that crosses train tracks, Iris keeps her eyes blindfolded with a scarf, anxious to discover where her boyfriend is taking her. When they finally arrive, Paul removes the blindfold, and she is amazed. Before them stands an imposing newly built tower called Skyview, a 150-meter-high skyscraper completed in just 5 months, and which, coincidentally, is celebrating its grand opening that night. In the background, Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash plays, a song that ironically mentions fire repeatedly. Before entering the building, Iris manages to see a boy being scolded by an employee of the place for stealing coins from the fountain. Upon entering the building, the couple takes a photo to remember the moment and heads to the elevator, which is full of people, so Iris prefers to wait for the next turn. However, Paul insists, mentioning that 2 more people won't make a difference, and Iris ends up agreeing. At the top of the building, they discover an elegant, exclusive access restaurant with reservations. The place is built with steel-reinforced glass floors and walls, decorated with modern crystal pendant lamps that reflect the light as if everything were floating. But something spoils the moment, as, despite having made a reservation, Paul is not on the list, and while they are allowed to stay in the place with Iris, they cannot give them a table for dinner. Faced with this, Iris tries to calm him down, tells him that it's an incredible surprise anyway, and to cheer him up, she plucks a rose from a nearby vase and puts it on his suit, but in doing so, she pricks her finger on a thorn. And we all know what that means, don't we? Next, we see that apparently Iris is afraid of heights, as approaching the enormous windows and looking down makes her so dizzy that she has to run to the bathroom. Just at that moment, one of the pointed fragments of the chandelier falls onto the glass floor, creating a small crack on the dance floor. While she is vomiting in the bathroom, the event singer approaches and asks her how many months pregnant she is. Although she initially denies it, she ends up saying that she thinks she is 2 months along, but hasn't told her boyfriend yet, because she doesn't know how he will react. The woman tells her that if she is sure he really loves her, he will be happy with the news. Feeling somewhat renewed, Iris leaves the bathroom and meets Paul again. He takes her to a terrace to admire the view together, and out of nowhere he kneels before her and proposes marriage. To this, Iris excitedly accepts and reveals that she is pregnant, which makes him extremely happy, and he decides to celebrate by dancing with his now fiancée on the dance floor. As they head to the dance floor, we see that outside remains that little brat, that boy, who keeps throwing the coins he stole from the fountain earlier into the void. But he is intercepted by an employee of the place, who tells him to stop doing that because he could hurt someone. And although the boy apologizes, when the employee loses sight of him, he throws the last coin, which ends up going through a ventilation grate and travels into the building's internal system, embedding itself in a running fan. The accumulated pressure on the object causes the coin to shoot out like a projectile, hitting a valve containing compressed gas. The gas slowly begins to leak through the ventilation ducts without anyone noticing. Meanwhile, inside, the party continues, and everyone dances to the rhythm of the music, but the crack in the glass floor keeps spreading. The accumulated weight of the attendees begins to loosen the screws holding the structure, and with each jump, they get closer and closer to catastrophe. At the exact moment the song ends, the glass floor completely shatters, and dozens of people fall into the void from 150 meters high, some violently colliding with the support columns, which also begin to give way. Paul also falls, but manages to hold on momentarily to a fragment of the glass floor, but it ends up cutting him, and he falls into the void after hitting one of the iron columns. Panic seizes the place. Everyone runs desperately towards the exit, and in the middle of the chaos, a person trips over a burning pan and catches fire. But that's not all, as running desperately because they are burning and passing by the air duct that was flooded with gas causes a huge explosion. Now, not only are they falling into the void, but they are also being incinerated. A group of people try to flee up the stairs, but part of the concrete structure collapses. We notice that the coin boy managed to save himself and heads to the ground floor. Without alternatives, they decide to use the elevator, but everyone wants to escape through it. An older man pushes Iris to get into the elevator himself, but the receptionist tells him that no more people fit, and in the struggle, the man gets trapped in the door. The elevator pulley breaks, and following this, we see that the top floor splits in two like the Titanic, but it doesn't completely separate. This woman falls against the window, and although it seems she will be saved and only has to stay still, death is convenient and makes the coin that caused all the commotion fall onto a swaying piano, and it collapses on the woman, breaking all the remaining structure in its path. But I must admit with some guilt that I felt extremely good with the scene that came moments later. In that scene, we see the rude boy, who has managed to get out of the building and has that mischievous smile as if saying, "I did it." Piano falls on him. Oh, you have no idea how much I enjoyed this scene. I even felt guilty, but he deserved it. At that moment, Iris, in total shock, believes she is alone until she hears the voice of a child calling for help, who turns out to be the son of the singer she confessed to being pregnant to. They both try to flee, but the building completely collapses, and they both fall from the heights, with a metal bar piercing Iris's face. In the present time, we meet our protagonist named Stephanie, who wakes up startled in the middle of a university class. And the thing is, everything we saw moments ago, the entire tower accident, was nothing more than a dream of the young woman. Following this, Stephanie wakes up again, now in her room, soaked in sweat after reliving the same nightmare once more. Stephanie tells her roommate that she has been having the same dream about her grandmother Iris for over 2 months and doesn't understand what's happening, as she doesn't even know her. The next day, Stephanie returns home, where she asks her father for a box where her mother used to keep old objects and phone numbers, as she wants to contact her grandmother Iris. Hearing this, her father, somewhat uncomfortable, replies that he got rid of that box a long time ago, when her mother abandoned them. Following this, her brother Charlie arrives home, barely greeting her, as if her presence doesn't matter to him. The boy says he will go to his cousin's house, and his sister offers to take him. Before leaving, his father tells her not to mention her grandmother Iris in that house for any reason. Already in the car, Stephanie confesses to her brother that the nightmares are severely affecting her, that her grades have dropped, and that she could lose her scholarship at any moment. Upon arriving at the place, they meet her mother's brother, her uncle Howard, his wife Brenda, and her cousins Julia, Eric, and Bobby. Without wasting time, Stephanie asks her uncle Howard about her grandmother Iris, and he makes it clear that he doesn't want to talk about her. But after her insistence, her uncle tells her that after the death of her father Paul, Iris was completely disturbed and kept saying that death would eventually come for them. The state intervened and took custody of her, and neither he nor Stephanie's mother ever saw her again. After that, years passed, and when her grandchildren were born, Iris began sending letters, some with terrifying images, telling Howard that he should protect them from death. And that's why he implores Stephanie to stay away from her grandmother. However, Stephanie begs her Aunt Brenda for help, who quietly and with a concealed gesture tells her that there is a letter with her grandmother's address in a living room drawer, and that she didn't find out through her. Upon searching, Stephanie finds an old photograph of her grandparents taken at the tower from the beginning of the film, and on the back there is a handwritten address. Following this, Stephanie travels to the address, which is a remote and lonely place in the city, more like a fortification from The Walking Dead than a house. When the girl rings the doorbell, an old woman's voice tells her to get lost, but upon saying that she is her granddaughter, the woman opens the gate. Upon entering the house, an old and emaciated Iris receives her, observes her carefully, and tells her that she looks just like her mother. After this, she invites her to sit down. And when asked about her mother, the girl says that she hasn't heard from her in a long time, as she abandoned her when she was 10 years old. Iris looks at her granddaughter with tired eyes and asks if she has come for the letters. But Stephanie says that the reason she is there is that every night she has the same nightmare of her dying in that tower. Hearing this, Iris tells her that what she has is not a nightmare, but the same premonition she had that very afternoon in 1968, a premonition thanks to which she was able to save everyone that day, as she took the coin from the boy, turned off the kitchen fire, and warned those dancing about the danger of the glass floor. She recounts that she saved many lives that day, and shortly after, the building was closed down. Iris comments that although she managed to avoid the disaster at that time, every person who was present that night died later, one by one, including her husband Paul. Iris managed to evade death for years, but she didn't come out unscathed, as cancer has arrived to take her life once and for all. While talking to Stephanie, she takes a book from the shelf without noticing that, in doing so, a lamp falls slightly at an angle that projects the light like a magnifying glass onto the wood, creating a small fire. But Iris detects it, moves the lamp in time, and lets out a smile, mocking death once again. The old woman warns her granddaughter that she must be careful, as she is now marked too, and insists that she must stay with her, protected in that house. The woman shows her her book, where she has recorded years of research on the patterns of death, the symbols it leaves behind, and the signs. Seeing all this, Stephanie feels trapped, apologizes, and says that she better leave. Her grandmother tells her please not to go as she is in danger, and tells her to at least take the book. But the girl wants nothing to do with it and leaves. Having no other choice, Iris does something she hasn't done in many years: leave the house. The old woman runs after her granddaughter, hands her the book, and tells her that she understands that she has to see to believe. so she takes a step back. And at that moment, a few days later, at her grandmother's funeral, Stephanie is still processing what happened. She talks to her father and uncle, repeating her grandmother's last words, "Death is coming for our family." At that precise moment, Darlene, Stephanie, and Charlie's mother appears at the funeral. Stephanie can't bear to see her as she abandoned her and walks away from the place. The next day at Howard's house, everyone seems relaxed, enjoying a barbecue in the backyard. While preparing drinks, one of the glass cups falls and breaks on the counter. Although they clean it up immediately, a small piece of glass inadvertently falls into the ice bucket, and shortly after, that same ice is used to prepare the drinks. In the middle of the celebration, Darlene arrives with peanut butter cookies, unaware that Bobby is terribly allergic to peanuts, so he prefers to put them away. Stephanie, in another part of the city, has a premonition that something bad is going to happen, so she gets in her car and drives desperately towards her uncle's house. Meanwhile, in the backyard, Charlie and Bobby convince Howard to get on the trampoline, ignoring that it's about to break and that there's a rusty rake right underneath. But Darlene sees it and pulls it out just in time. However, the danger doesn't end, as Brenda accidentally knocks over a beer, which falls and activates a button that starts inflating a pressurized air hose located right next to the lawn. When Stephanie arrives at the barbecue, Howard greets her very happily. But just at that moment, the drink containing the piece of glass falls. Howard steps on it, and the glass completely pierces his foot. The man stumbles and falls. The next day, after the funeral, Stephanie returns home completely transformed. Her Uncle Howard's funeral is the confirmation of everything. Death is following the family tree and is not going to stop. Reviewing her grandmother's notes, she realizes that the patterns are clear. Howard's lineage is marked first, and that means his children are next. Following this, Stephanie tries to warn her family, telling them that by Iris being saved that afternoon in 1968, she had 2 children, Howard and Darlene, who had offspring that should never have existed, as Iris should have died that afternoon. And now death will go after all of them to claim what belongs to it. According to her calculations, it first took Howard as the eldest, and now it will go after his children, more precisely the eldest Eric, then Julia, then Bobby, then her mother Darlene, then her, and finally it will go after her brother Charlie. As expected, no one believes her, and they just look at her as a young woman disturbed by the tragedy. And as happened to Iris in her time, Stephanie is left completely alone in her attempt to break the cycle. That same night, Eric, Howard's eldest son, who works at his tattoo and piercing parlor after finishing his shift, begins to clean up and uses a large container of disinfectant, leaving it open on the table. Everything seems routine until he drops an ornament that impacts a jar full of tweezers. The crash startles him, and as he gets up, he accidentally knocks the container to the floor. While he is cleaning, a chain that was hooked to the ceiling unhooks to get caught in his nose piercing. And you have to be really unlucky for it to get caught right in your nose, huh? That chain also gets tangled in the fan, which keeps pulling him upwards. Although Eric manages to break free, a lamp falls to the floor, sparking with the thinner that had spilled earlier and setting the whole place on fire with Eric inside. The next morning, Stephanie wakes up with a racing heart, as she believes something happened to Eric. Telling Charlie, they both go to look for him and find him on the street. He says he managed to put out the fire and that nothing happened to him, so he makes fun of Stephanie again. Arriving at Eric's house, we see Julia go for a run, and out of nowhere, a child hits her in the head with a ball, causing the girl to fall into a dumpster, and the garbage truck picks her up. Although the boys try to stop the truck to tell it to stop the compactor, they don't manage to arrive in time, and it crushes Julia's head right in front of Stephanie. After the funeral, everyone begins to slightly believe that Stephanie is right, but they don't understand why Julia died instead of Eric. At that moment, Brenda breaks down and says that he didn't die because he is not Howard's son, but the son of another man she had an affair with. Upon discovering this, Bobby understands that he is next and begs Stephanie for help. In the middle of the chaos, the girl says that in Iris's letters, she mentions a man named J.B., who is someone who apparently managed to cheat death. After an investigation, they discover that the man works in a hospital, and in this way, Eric, Bobby, Charlie, Darlene, and Stephanie go to look for him. On the trip, Darlene finally talks to her daughter and confesses that she abandoned her family to protect her, as her mother traumatized her, and she too had begun to feel that constant paranoia of death, the same one that destroyed Iris. And because she didn't want them to end up like her and Howard, she preferred to leave to protect them. Already at the hospital, the family finally finds J.B., the mysterious survivor mentioned in Iris's letters, who we discover is none other than the best character in the entire series, and I stand up, our beloved coroner William John Bloodworth. The coroner not only knows all the members of the family but also fondly remembers Iris, as she was the one who saved him the afternoon of the accident. And in case you didn't realize, he was the tower singer's son. The man reveals that he maintained communication all these years with Iris and that she became a great friend to him. But just like her, death also came looking for him, as he has cancer. In a grave tone, the coroner reveals the only two known ways to break the cycle: kill or die. By taking a life, one inherits the remaining time of that person. But there is another way, as someone can voluntarily die and be revived, as happened with a woman named Kimberly in the past. And yes, he is referring to our Kimberly from Final Destination 2. Before leaving, he wishes them good luck. Following this, time runs out, and Bobby decides to take a risk. Between him and Eric, they devise a plan for Bobby to die, and since he is in a hospital, someone will come to revive him, and thus he can cheat death. The idea is simple. Since Bobby is allergic to peanuts, Eric proposes that he eat a peanut-containing candy and die from an allergic reaction, and then a nurse will bring him back. They both take a candy from a machine, and as it jams, Eric forces it, cracking the glass with one of the springs. After this, they both hide in a room where there is an MRI machine. Eric tells him he will go get a wheelchair for when Bobby dies, and as he closes the door very hard, a medical chart falls onto the computer and activates the MRI, which increasingly raises its level of attraction. When Eric returns with the chair, he gives Bobby the peanut butter cookie candy to eat, and as soon as he does, he begins to have an allergic reaction, as expected. At the same time, the MRI begins to raise its attraction system to a critical level, so all the metals nearby begin to move towards the machine, including the rings Eric has in his ears, his nipples, and apparently he also has one in his cyclops. Come on, dude, seriously? What's the need to put a ring on your rat? My God. Amid the extreme magnetization, Bobby is about to die as he can't breathe, and we see that the machine finishes sucking in Eric, and behind him, the wheelchair, crushing all his bones. With his last strength, Bobby manages to inject his epinephrine and saves himself. But when a nurse opens the door, the candy machine that had been left with the cracked glass shoots out the spring, which lodges in Bobby's head. When the police arrive, we see that this old woman found the coin that fell out of Stephanie's book at the hospital, which seems unimportant, but you'll see. Following this, Stephanie knows that her mother, she, and her brother are next, exactly in that order. And Darlene makes the most extreme decision. Just like her mother Iris, she plans to isolate herself in the same remote cabin without contact with the outside world, because as long as she doesn't die, death cannot continue with the next on the list. And this is how she will save her children. When they arrive at Iris's house, since she is dead and the house has many security traps, Stephanie has no choice but to accelerate and crash through the gate to enter, which causes a spark to ignite the leaves on the roof. And when her mother and brother get out, an explosion rocks the cabin, throws the truck into the lake, and leaves Stephanie trapped by the seatbelt, badly injured. Darlene saves Charlie from being crushed by a metal structure, and no sooner does she finish telling him to go save his sister, that she will get to safety to trick death. Then a lamppost falls on her and crushes her completely. Without much time to process what she has just seen, Charlie goes in search of his sister, who has just drowned, and manages to revive her. Sometime later, the family tries to move on. And on Charlie's graduation day, Stephanie accompanies him. She tells him she is very proud of him, adjusts the rose on his suit, and pricks herself with the rose's thorn. From here on, Stephanie begins to feel that strange way we all know. Suddenly, the father of the girl Charlie will go to the graduation party with arrives, and between chats, they tell her that they are very close and that, in fact, Charlie brought her back from the dead when he revived her. The doctor tells her that it's not really like that, as she was only unconscious and Charlie only revived her, so she was never dead. The movie ends by showing us that, in another part of the city, the woman who had picked up the coin that fell from Stephanie's book at the hospital loses it, and it rolls away and falls right between the joints of the train tracks, causing the train to derail and drag along the entire street where Charlie and Stephanie are. They run and avoid being run over by the train, but at that moment, as could not be otherwise, a logging truck crashes into the train, and the logs crush both of them. And the movie ends this way.